I'm Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of this newsletter is going to be why she hasn't made you her boyfriend yet. Got an email here from a viewer, but before we get into that, I've got a great quote that I want to share from you, or share with you, I should say, from Ralph Waldo Emerson. He says, "We become what we think about all day long." So obviously, choose your thoughts and what you choose to focus your time on. Because where intention goes, energy flows. You get what you focus on in life, and what you focus on expands. So just like Master Yoda once said a long, long time ago, be mindful of your thoughts. So his viewer, he says, "Hey, Coach Corey, I was dating a woman for a couple of months in the late summer, and she ended things because of my weak, wimpy behavior. I wanted something exclusive. I professed love. I tried to speed things over the finish line." It's not a good way to go. And he says, "Since we worked together, we were still around each other quite often. And at that point, I discovered your website, videos, and I read your book. And after 3 months apart, she came back to me slowly, and we began dating again. And we've been seeing each other for about 3 months now, and I feel like I'm getting better control of this situation than I had been before." One thing you got to understand about these kinds of situations when you reattract an ex is that you got to remember that she had all that time with you prior to that, where you were doing a lot of things that made, just like you said yourself, weak, wimpy behavior in your own particular words. And so she became emotionally conditioned to the point where that's pretty much how she thought about you, was in a negative light, so much to the point where she actually ended up breaking up with you. And since men and women both tend to look to the past or towards the past through rose-colored glasses, in other words, the longer the time has passed since your breakup, the greater the likelihood is that that person tends to look towards things in a positive light as opposed to all of the reasons why they broke up. Because she goes out, she gets hit on, all the guys out there don't know what the hell they're doing, and she thinks, maybe that guy wasn't so bad after all. Maybe I should give him a call and see what he's doing. And it's like they slowly start to come back, put their toe in the water a little bit. And the idea, all you have to do is when they start calling you and texting you, because it doesn't make any sense to chase somebody who doesn't want to be in a relationship, who doesn't want you anymore, and is unwilling to work at it, because it takes two to make a relationship work. You've got to have the other person willing to make the effort. And if they're unwilling to make the effort, then there's not a damn thing that you can do to help them. Just like in what I do, I can't help anybody unless they've gotten to the point where they realize either what they're doing is not working, or they're at the point where they're tired of things being the way they are and they want to make a change. Same thing in relationships. If she's unwilling to make the effort, you can't force it, and you should never try to keep somebody in your life who really doesn't give a rat's ass about keeping you in theirs. And the quickest way, the interesting thing is just human nature, the quickest way to gain someone else's attention is to remove yours. And so like guys like this particular guy, it's like you're going along and you're chasing, trying to get your ex back, and it doesn't work. Then you come across a website like mine, you realize, wow, now I see what I did to drive her away. And so you start working on that and focusing on your own bad behavior, and you just simply back away from the situation. You leave the door open by telling the girl, "Hey, give me a call if you change your mind. I'd love to get together and hang out." And sometimes it might be a couple of months that go by, and just when you're thinking that it's completely over and you're never going to hear from this person again, you're feeling good about things, you're dating new people, and all of a sudden the ex calls you. And so the key is that when those moments happen, if you are trying to get an ex back, is that you get yourself in a position where you're ready for that person by having other choices, by having other options. Because more often than not, when you're reattracting an ex, if at some point you would stop putting your best foot forward, then whenever you go back to somebody, what you got to keep in mind is all those reasons that they turned you off before and caused you to no longer make the effort that you once did until obviously after they dumped you, those reasons are still there. People don't change, but they will become a better version of themselves. So he says, after 3 months apart, she came back to me slowly and we began dating again. Like I say, the way to hang out, have fun, and hook up. That's what the guy needs to focus on. Not labels, not getting back together, or any of that stuff. Hanging out, having fun, and hooking up. And getting her to the point where she feels comfortable, she feels safe. So she starts, because what happens as her interest goes up over time, she starts calling, texting, and pursuing more and more. It starts out very little in the beginning, but over the course of about, if you do more things right than wrong, it'll usually take you about 2 months. Now, in this particular case, you did a lot of screwing up, so there's a lot of, she's going to be skeptical. She's going to be very cautious because she's going to be protecting her heart. And so it may take 3 or 4 months, because the other thing that you don't realize is you're applying this stuff, and sometimes you're doing things right, sometimes you're doing things wrong. Sometimes you're backing off a little too much, and sometimes you're not pursuing enough. And so the idea is learning your balance. And so keep in mind, this is the first time you're applying it. You've successfully reattracted this girl to this point, but yet where we're going to get to in a second is his email is that she's not in love with him yet, and he feels like, hey, it's been several months, it should be there. And so the thing you got to keep in mind is all the things you did wrong in the past, plus you're presently still trying to really do things right. And so the more you do things right, the quicker she's going to fall in love. But the more you throw a monkey wrench into the gear, so to speak, and slow things down, in other words, you're emotionally slowing down her rising interest, her rising level of attraction and sexual anticipation. It's not growing as quickly as it could be, because you're your own worst enemy, in essence, when you're trying to learn this stuff and practice it for the first time and not go back, especially like in this particular case, this guy's trying to overcome needy tendencies. It's very hard when, especially like in this particular case, he's already been rejected by this girl, and that's what he's trying to avoid. And so when there's time in between where he's not talking to her, or maybe it's been a few hours, or maybe it's been a day or two, then you start to get all worried and fearful, especially like say you spent 3 or 4 days together, and then all of a sudden you haven't heard from her in 2 days. It's like when those things happen, when you are facing those moments with those insecurities and those fears that come up from within inside you that cause you to falsely assume that you need to do something to facilitate, as opposed to just hanging back and just saying, hey, I'm going to call her once a week no matter what. And then in the meantime, if I haven't heard from her in 2 or 3 days, it just means that she's not ready to see me yet. And instead of coming unglued at that thought, you just have peace with it, and you don't let it get under your skin or bother you or cause you to start doing things to try to force things along, because you said so yourself. You trying to force things along is what got you rejected in the first place. And that's most often what the average guy does. He says, we spend several nights together each week and are having amazing sex and really enjoy each other's company. And having read your book several times, I had thought that by at this point she would be coming to me asking about the relationship, exclusivity, and moving things to the next level. Well, when she's calling, texting, pursuing, and sending you 2 or 3, 4 texts a day, consistently 2 or 3 phone calls a day, and you're pretty much seeing her every day, that's the point where the exclusivity comes up. But if you're only seeing each other a couple times a week, then it's just, you got to look at that and say it's not there yet. She should be doing 70 to 80% of calling, texting, pursuing. So if you're in the 50 to 60% range, meaning she's only doing 50 to 60% of the pursuing, it's still not enough. It's got to be 70 to 80%. That's ideally where she's pursuing it, because think about this. If she's reaching out to you constantly, if she's calling you constantly, if she's texting you constantly, just little sweet messages, things of that nature, it's because she's really comfortable and emotionally her interest is really high. Her level of attraction is really high at that point. But the lower it is, the less she's going to do those things. And so just from what you've shared with me to this point, she's just simply not there yet. And so you gotta cut yourself some slack and realize that you didn't start off, this is not a brand new girl. It's not somebody you started off perfect with. You have a lot of bad behavior and programming, in essence, that you're trying to overcome with this girl. And it just takes time. It takes doing things consistently, day in and day out, long enough, and being patient enough, and not, because the thing is, when you look at it and go, wow, she's not in love with me yet. Why hasn't she asked me to be her boyfriend yet? And then what happens is you start thinking about that and you focus on that, and what you focus on expands. And so if you're in a fearful place, that's going to cloud your judgment. It's going to cloud the things you do and say, and cause you to, in essence, go right back to that bad behavior that pushed her away in the first place. It's like you've got to learn to maintain your emotional center at all times throughout the relationship, not just when things are going well. So he says, she's done none of this, in other words, wanting exclusivity, and I've been careful not to broach the issue. Good, you should never bring it up, because that just say, hey, you got to objectively look at it and say her interest is just simply not there yet. He says, but anytime I've said anything that could be construed as discussing our relationship, she's backed away. See, that should also tell you that's direct feedback. That tells you when you bring that up, it causes her to back away, and you're trying to get her to the point where she's asking you to be your boyfriend, and see, you bring it up, it pushes her away, and so you're obviously more into this girl than she is into you at that particular point. You got to pay attention to that, because if you ignore those things, you can ignore reality, but you can't ignore the consequences of ignoring reality. He says, last night, in fact, I told her something simple like our time together makes me really happy. She didn't really even respond to this, and what I've discovered through conversations with mutual friends and directly with her, in fact, is that this girl is emotionally closed off. She had a bad relationship with her mother. Her parents divorced at a young age, and while she has a fantastic relationship with her father, she never connected to her mother, and in fact, her mother never really showed any emotional support or availability. I'm not sure what to do. I don't think I can make her change. You're right, you can't make people change. They'll become a better version of themselves, but you can't make them change. He says, I'm terrified to even attempt progressing this at my suggestion or even have a real discussion about our relationship. Well, this tells me, because you're writing to me, you're focused on when's the relationship going to happen, when is she going to be blowing up my phone. And when you're focused on these things, it causes you to get out of being in the present moment. Instead of being in the present moment and enjoying your time with her, you're all worried about what's going to happen in the future, what this means, what that means, what she did yesterday means, and trying to figure it out. And you're all in your head. And that's going to cause her to feel uncomfortable when she's around you, because she can tell that you're not being yourself. He's like, and so what I'm basically telling you is that you're not helping your case here by focusing on the relationship. Your job is to create fun-filled romantic opportunities for sex to happen. Rinse, recycle, repeat, and be patient enough and back off enough to the point where when you're sitting there biting your nails at home, because you got to get to the point where she's doing 70 to 80% of the texting, and obviously at this point, if it's not, I don't think it's probably there if I was a betting man, because how do I know that? I just look at her actions. She's not emotionally in a place where she's crazy about you. And I can understand her not showing her emotions, but she's also not doing anything that shows me that her interest is in the 90% range. And that is a direct result of how you are showing up. He says, I don't want to repeat the mistakes that ended our situation the first time. Well, you are by focusing on them in a way. He says, but I'd like to see some forward progress in our relationship. Why? I mean, think about it. What do you need it for? So you can feel good about yourself, so you can sleep better at night? I mean, think about that for a second. In other words, you're saying, I need her to validate me in some way. That's what you're looking at. I'm telling myself not to rush this, but I'm wondering if there will ever be any progress. Everything else is going well. We're hanging out, having fun, and hooking up, as you suggest. But she's not coming to me in any sort of manner I thought she would be at this point. And I don't want to lose her. Well, like I said, that tells me that you're probably calling her too much, and you're probably still pursuing her way too much, and the ratio is out of whack. So it's probably around 50-50. You're probably pursuing her 50% of the time, she's probably pursuing you. And you just haven't had the guts enough to back off enough because you're worried she's just going to disappear forever. But look at this. The fallback position, you call once a week for a date, and you take her out. And then when you hear from her in between those times, hey, great to hear from you. I'd love to see you when you're free to get together. Make a date, then get off the phone. And that's what you do over and over. And as the weeks go by, it gets to the point where she's pretty much calling and texting you 2 or 3 times a day. And you're pretty much seeing each other every day. But you allow her to come to you. When she wants to see you, she'll reach out to you. Make the date after that. Keep it really simple, because you're going to complicate things if you keep focusing on the relationship. So if you want to get my help right away, the quickest way is to go to my website right now, click the products tab, and book a paid phone coaching session. And I will talk to you soon.